Hey everyone, welcome back to the Leadership Project with your host Mick Spears, where our vision is to inspire all leaders to challenge the status quo, and we seek to empower modern leaders through knowledge and emotional intelligence. You're in for a really special treat today as we're joined by Lisa Partridge, the founder of 6COMMS, a communication and facilitation expert who has helped the likes of Singapore Airlines to improve the communication skills of their world-class cabin crew. Lisa is going to share her knowledge, skills and experience about the fundamental communication skills that all leaders must have in their kit bag. There are so many nuggets of gold in today's episode, and I know that you're going to get really great value from this. So please do sit back, enjoy the show, and take some notes of what Lisa is about to share with us. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Leadership Project. It's a really great pleasure to be joined today by Lisa Partridge. Lisa is from 6COMMS, and she's an expert in instructional design with a specific focus on communication skills and on facilitation skills. And Lisa's here to share with us her thoughts on the fundamental skills that all leaders need when it comes to effective communication and, in some cases, being able to have those facilitation skills. Lisa, it's great to have you here. Please say hello to our audience.
Oh, hello, Mick, and thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa. I'm from 6COMMS, and I'm an instructional designer and facilitator. And I've been in Singapore actually since 2009.
Oh, fantastic.
So quite a long time now.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Tell us more about your background and how you ended up here.
I actually ran my own business in London before coming to Singapore. My husband got an opportunity. It came from the sky, out of nowhere. And we found ourselves in Singapore thinking that it would be 2-3 years and then we'd go back. But we settled here. We liked it. We now have 3 children.
And congrats.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So we've made Singapore our home.
You know what? That's a story that I've heard so many times. And I lived in Hong Kong. My wife and I lived there before we came to Singapore. And the amount of times that we heard people say, you know, I came to Hong Kong for a 1-month business trip 20 years ago, and then they never leave. And it's quite a common story, either in Hong Kong or Singapore, sometimes in Thailand, etc. So very interesting. I'm sure you know others that are similar to that, yes?
Yeah, definitely.
So how did you land in instructional design? Or tell us more about your background leading into that as well.
Okay. So when I graduated, I actually went to Japan, and my background is teaching English as a foreign language. So when I was at university, I had the travel bug. I really love traveling. I love learning about different cultures. And I also studied English literature at degree level and psychology. So I did a joint honours. So a real interest in people from a very young age, and also a great love of English literature. So I thought, put the two together, travel the world and teach at the same time. So teaching English as a foreign language seemed like a great idea. So that was kind of my background, and I did that for a few years. I went to Japan, it took me to Italy and Germany, and then I went back to London because my mum and my family were missing me, and I decided to start my own business. So I ran a small business with maybe 4 or 5 consultants that worked for me, and we travelled all across London going into organisations and teaching them English and being able to communicate in meetings, also take Cambridge certificate exams so that they could go on to university or get jobs. So it was quite varied. It was a really enjoyable experience. But as I say, Singapore opportunity came along, and in 2009, if you remember, there was a massive credit crunch.
Yes. Yeah.
So a lot of people were losing their jobs. So we thought it was the right time to move and try something a bit different.
And clearly no regrets by the sounds of it.
No regrets so far.
Yeah.
And I came across thinking that perhaps I could still run the business, but the business was really me. I mean, I was the driving force in it. So I couldn't sustain that.
Sure.
So I tried at the beginning, and then I realised I'm not very good at being unemployed and stuck at home. So I know we didn't know anyone. We didn't have any friends. We didn't have any family here. So I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to work for the British Council here in Singapore for the Professional Development Centre.
Ah, right.
And that was really specialised in corporate training.
All right. Come back to that shortly. I'm intrigued by all of those countries that you rattled off. Can I make a bold assumption? Does that mean that you speak how many languages?
I wish.
Oh, no? So
I can speak
Japan, Germany,
for survival.
Survival
stuff.
Yeah.
But the downside of being an English teacher is everybody knows you're an English teacher. When I was in Japan, I was in a small town and everybody knew that I was the English teacher.
Oh, wow.
So they just wanted to practice their English with me.
Right,
they weren't interested in talking to me in Japanese.
I remember when I first started doing business trips to China, same thing. I put a lot of effort in trying to learn Chinese, and not very well, by the way, but I put a lot of effort in, and I thought, I'm going to get all of this practice, and everyone wanted to speak English with me, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
That's an amazing experience, though, to have as a young person to travel into all of those different countries. What was the biggest lesson that you took out of that?
I think the biggest lesson is, yes, we're very different in terms of traditions and customs and beliefs, but it doesn't matter where you are. We're all human and we all kind of have very similar values. We all need to be loved. We all need to feel that we belong. We all need to have connection with others. And we all want to be communicated in a way that really puts us as a human first. And yeah, there are differences, of course there are. But there are big things that are the same with all of us.
That's a great lesson to take from that. And I'd love to dig more into that at some point. So getting back to then the British Council. So you end up at the British Council and you're running these corporate professional programs. Tell us more about that. What did that involve and what did the day of Lisa look like when you were doing that?
Yeah, so when I first joined, I was known as an hourly paid, which means I was kind of a freelance. I wasn't working full time, but I was there when they needed me. So the beauty of that was it was very varied. So one week I could be in Singapore Airlines doing a 3-day communication skills course with the newly recruited cabin crew, for example. And then the next week I could be in a classroom-based training conducting grammar skills for 2 days with, middle management from all different organisations because it was public and anyone could join. And then the next week I might be working closely with a client with a specific group, and that was very tailored, and I'd have to design something that was in line with their needs and their requirements. So it was really varied. But it was all under that umbrella of communication skills, whether that be communicating to passengers in a customer service role, or whether that be writing an email to your manager, setting the right tone and the style, having some kind of consistency in the structure and the way that you put that together. Or it could be with a group of graduates. They've been in the job for 2-3 years. And, their managers had sent them on a course in presentation skills because they thought they could be a bit more polished than they were. So I'd work with a group for 2 days. We'd record them doing the presentation and give live feedback.
What a great experience and all that different variety. In fact, I would go out and say that would make you a richer person each time that you went into it, and you would be learning every day as well, I imagine, yes?
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, presentation skills courses was one of my favourite courses, and working with the young Singapore Airlines crew was a joy because they were new to Singapore, so often they'd come from different countries. So it was all new for them. It was like a new culture, a new country, a new job, a new company culture that they'd never experienced before. And so actually through their eyes, I learned a lot. And when I did presentation skills courses with the young graduates, I'd always learn something, or they'd bring a topic and, because I left it open. I said, your last presentation, you can do any topic that you're passionate about. And I learned things that I never thought I would learn. So, I think it was definitely a two-way thing. And I believe personally as a learning facilitator, we have to be like that. We have to go into a room or a virtual space and have the mindset that I'm going to learn as much as the people that I'm facilitating will learn.
I really believe that lifelong leaders are lifelong learners, and I set my own personal goal to learn something new every day, and I do without any doubt. Part of my self-reflection at the end of every day is to see what I did learn to make sure I can apply that knowledge into the future. So the experience that you've had, you must have collected so many of those. I have to say, congratulations on your success. To be clear, this podcast is not sponsored by Singapore Airlines. If Singapore Airlines is listening and they want to extend my PPS Club membership for many years to come, go right ahead. But I've got to tell you this, without any stretch, Singapore Airlines is the best airline in the world. I'm going to say by some distance, I'll give some credit to Emirates and probably Etihad. They also are amazing. But by some distance, Singapore Airlines is just incredible. The customer service, the presentation skills, the clarity of their communication, it's really something. So if you've had anything to do with that success, which I'm saying that you have, that is, you've got to have that as a real badge of honor that you've been part of that experience and the culture that they've built.
Yeah, it was an honour, and I have to say that there is an amazing internal team there that do amazing training. So it's very, very organised and slick. They really know what they're doing over there. So it was an honour to be a part of it. Yeah.
When we do travel again, because I guess most of us aren't travelling anywhere at the moment, but when you do travel again, if you've never tried Singapore Airlines, try it at least once. It's just amazing. They're my go-to, and if I've got a choice at any time, they're always the one. And it's because of that customer service and that presentation, I've got to say to you, Lisa. They're just incredible. Now, we need to pivot towards leaders now. This is the leadership project. Our vision is to inspire all leaders to challenge the status quo, to really think about what it means to be a modern leader and to think about new ways of approaching things like emotional intelligence, communication, all of these things, knowledge sharing. I think back to history of when I first started work, and people would use words like knowledge is power, and they would protect their knowledge with all their gusto and all this kind of stuff. So trying to challenge some of that. Now, an interesting thing for our audience, and Lisa, you would remember this. It was an interesting conversation when we first met. You had almost a visceral reaction to the word leadership. Now, why was that? What is it about the word leadership that caused a reaction like that?
Let me just clarify. I think my reaction, not on the word, leadership in isolation, but leadership communication, when we put those two words together. I've been training and delivering workshops to do with communication for a lot of years now. And I think communication skills, we need to have a level of those, whatever position we hold. And the way I look at leadership is not leaders are the only ones with that title. Leaders can be anyone within an organisation. And I think that as good, effective professionals in any organisation that you're working for, you need a certain level of communication skills. So I find it difficult to put leadership and communication together, and I'm still not sure how leadership communication differs from just having good, effective communication skills. Does that make sense?
It does, and that clarifies things a lot. We have a saying here at the Leadership Project, which I will openly admit that we stole, plagiarized, borrowed, whatever the right word is, from Simon Sinek, and that is that leadership is not a rank. It's a responsibility, it's a set of values and attributes, and it's the ability to inspire someone to do something because they want to do it. And hopefully that's a good thing. It's something where you're inspiring them into an action that is for good cause, not for some kind of negative application or whatever the case may be. So as opposed to managers who tell people what to do and they may or may not do it because the boss told them to, it's about inspiring people to do things because they want to do it and they want to be part of something bigger or achieve some kind of vision. And hopefully that vision is an altruistic vision that improves the world. Mm-hmm. So we fully agree with you that leadership is not a position, it's not a rank, it's a responsibility, and it's about inspiring people. The other part that you brought up there about communication, yes. The question I want to go to now is, what do you think are, and I'm using my words carefully here, the communication skills that all leaders should have in their kit bag? So I'm not saying what is leadership communication. I'm saying if you're going to be a good leader, most people put together that you need to be an effective communicator. Mm-hmm. So what do you think are the communication skills that a good leader should have?
So this actually, my answer is in the name of my company, which is SIXCOMMS. So the 6C is bolded, and that's because I think communication is, or effective communication is, having compassion, being curious, having the ability to connect with others, having clarity, customizing your message to suit the audience that's in front of you, and last but not least, consistency. So consistency in the message, so that builds trust. So consistency in what you're saying and you're doing.
We did speak about the 6 C's before we started today, and it really got my attention. I want to unpack it a little bit. Let's start with compassion. What is compassion, and is it different to either empathy or sympathy? And I've got to remember I'm talking to an English lit person here as well, so you're probably just going to give me a lecture. But yeah, so what is compassion? What does that mean to you?
Well, I'll definitely won't give you a lecture, but as succinct as I can be, empathy is when you put yourself in the shoes of another. And I think it's Daniel Goleman in the 6 Seconds, the emotional intelligence area. He talks about 3 types of empathy. So cognitive empathy, where you are feeling with the other person, and also compassionate empathy. And compassionate empathy for me is empathy plus action equals compassion. So it's taking empathy to the next level. So I can't feel what you feel, but I'm trying to take your perspective. I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, trying to understand your viewpoint. Now I've understood that. What am I going to do to try to help resolve that? And that for me is compassion. It's empathy with action.
That helps me a lot. It's something that I've often thought of. People often confuse empathy with sympathy as well. So what's the difference between empathy and sympathy for you?
There's a great Brené Brown video, a little cartoon that she uses to describe that. And sympathy, she has one character. They're 2 animals. I can't remember exactly what animals they are. But if you just go on YouTube and put Brené Brown, empathy versus sympathy. And when they're describing sympathy, the animal is looking down the hole at the other animal that's suffering and saying, oh, that looks like you're going through a tough time. That's sympathy, looking from afar and saying something that makes the person feel a little bit better, like you're listening to them. Empathy is climbing down into the hole and actually standing next to the person. In some cases, putting your arm around, In some cases, saying something. In some cases, not saying anything at all. It depends on the context. And I think sometimes as leaders or any professionals, if your colleague is having a rough time, sometimes you don't need to say anything actually. And that's the most empathetic thing you can do, is to just sit with.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
This can be part of it. It's interesting. Like, it's whether, are you just there to listen and be a sounding board, etc., or is the person actually looking for you to do anything and solve their problem, or whatever the case may be? That's a good one. All right, let's talk about connection. What does that mean to you, and what does it mean to communicate with connection?
Yeah, communicating with connection, actually, I can see one of the leaders that most inspired me come to mind, because he was very good at connecting with people. So first thing in the morning, if you were in the office, he would come and greet you and just spend 2-3 minutes, not very long, just talking to you, maybe about, what did you do at the weekend? Or he'd remember something you said the week before and make reference to it. So, I had young children. Sometimes I'd share that I was having a difficult time. Maybe they were starting school and it was difficult in the mornings. And he would come and he would remember that. And he would say, oh, how's your son getting on at school? I know you were having a rough time last week. And some of the things he remembered just astounded me. This guy was really, really busy. He had like the top director job, but he remembered little details about everybody on the team. And it made such a difference. And I think that really is connection. It's making the conscious, intentional effort to get to know the people that you work with on a human level, and then make reference to that.
How did that make you feel when he did that?
It just made me feel like I was special, that I was a valuable team member, that I mattered. And I think at the end of the day, going back to what we were saying about going to all these different countries, that's one of the things that we all just want from a leader, is to be made to feel that we matter, that we're valuable, that I'm a person before I'm a worker for you.
That might be the best segue to then go to customization. And let's pick this same person, or if you've got another story to share to emphasize this one, that's fine as well. But how did that leader then take that connection and turn it into some kind of customization of their communication with you?
So, he knew my family circumstance. He knew I had, at that time, 2 very young children. So he would always start a conversation off with that. Then he'd say things like, oh, maybe this project might be a bit too much for you right now. Or is that something that you want to take on? Do you think that would be all right? Would that fit in with your home life? And I appreciated that. So I think, he did take that step further. And then he trusted me. That was the other thing. If I said, no, I really want to take on this challenge. I think I'm ready. I want to take on this project. It would be really interesting for me. Then he'd listen and he'd say, right. And he wouldn't question it.
Yeah.
But then he'd also not make me feel that if I couldn't do it at any point, that I wasn't able to say that. So he was a person that would check in every so often. He'd say, don't feel pressure. If you really can't handle it, then we'll have another look and we'll take you off and we'll manage it somehow.
Let's move on to clarity then. So what does it mean to communicate with clarity, and maybe put that in a leadership context as well, in terms of communication from a leader to a group of people, even if they're not, like we said before, it doesn't have to be a position in a company, but from a leadership perspective, why is clarity so important?
So, I think if you're going in and you're presenting to your team and you've got a particular agenda, then you've got to be really clear on what that is. What is that key message that you want everyone to take away by the end of that meeting or that presentation? So what is that one key takeaway? And clarity gets really difficult if you're trying to do too many things all at once. what we've talked about before is that this magic number 3. And I think there are lots of different versions of this. Some people say it's 4. I've always worked with the power of 3. So try to go in that. That seems a number that most people can contain, can process. So clarity is about knowing those 3 points really, really well, like the back of your hand. And you know, as a leader, if you've achieved that, by the end of it, everyone has taken those 3 points. And if they have, then you've been clear in your message. Yeah,
I swear by it. That's what I tell all of my team. It's what I practice myself. I practice the rule of 3s all the time. And it becomes increasingly difficult, by the way. The more expert you become in a topic, the more difficult it is to break it down to the 3 most important things, because you feel like, oh, everyone's got to know this, they've got to know this, they've got to know this. And if you broadcast 27 things at once, you're going to lose everyone. Consistency. Why does that make the list? Why does consistency make your list of your 6 C's?
Yeah, I think that, going back to my previous example, if you're connecting with people and remembering things about them, and it's okay to do that. It's great to do that and consistently do that, because that's going to build that trust within the team. But if you're going to do that and then discount what you found out by giving maybe a project that that person can't handle because you've had XYZ conversations with them in the past, if you're not holding on to that information and then acting on it, then there's a disconnect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm going to unpack it a little bit more. I'm going to ask you a bit of advice first. Live advice on a podcast. No issue with that whatsoever.
No pressure.
Then I'm going to give an example of something that might help people remember this one, but consistency. Something that I do, and if you ask any of my current team or any of my former team, it'd be interesting to see what they'd say, but I'm sure that they would tell you that I am quite consistent with things like vision, values, and beliefs. My current team, we develop a product called UMO, and I would say any of them that have been in a meeting with me, let's say 200 times, they've heard me say our vision 200 times, word for word, heard me talk about our values, our beliefs, the things that we fundamentally believe in. If they've been in any presentation with me, whether it's a team meeting or a meeting with a customer, they could probably rehearse it to you word for word in terms of the things that I say. When does that run the risk that, yes, I'm being consistent, yes, I'm unwavering in our beliefs and our values? When does it become monotonous of, no, here goes Mick again, he's on his spiel? What's the borderline between being consistent and being monotonous? Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's good to live your values consistently. So if you're saying that, hey, these are our values as a team, and you see it not happening in some way, then I think it's your responsibility as a leader to call it out. And I don't necessarily think that having the team know the values and being drilled them in every morning meeting is going to make them live them. So I think it's more about changing it up and not having the same script, if you like, every morning, but maybe finding different ways to show those values.
This is where I think things like the power of storytelling comes in, because then you can use stories to emphasize the vision and the beliefs and the values. And by the way, in terms of living those values and what we hold ourselves true to, it happened this morning. In my last meeting of today, we had to call ourselves on it and go, well, hang on a second, is this decision we're about to make, is that consistent with our values? And it wasn't. And we reversed the decision in that meeting. So it's more about action than being able to rehearse the speech of the vision and the values. The other part on consistency, this is my view now, and I want you to challenge me if you disagree. One of the things, whenever I look at a term like that, and if I think that I or someone else might be struggling to understand what it means, sometimes I purposely just think of what is the opposite. When I'm trying to explain to someone what inclusion means, I often explain to them what exclusion is and what it feels like. And then there's like this light bulb moment. Okay, so that means inclusion. If you take steps to make sure that no one feels excluded, you're on your way towards getting towards inclusion. It's not identical, but it's a good way of almost tricking your brain into understanding what it's about. So when I looked at consistency and I saw your 6 C's, I instantly started thinking about leaders I've had in the past that were inconsistent and how that made me feel. And that's what made me realize the power of consistency. Any reflections on that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of highlighting what it is we actually mean is looking at what it's not. Unfortunately, I've got a lot of examples of what it's not. So yeah, I mean, a leader coming in and saying, you are really valued as a team and we really value the work that you've been doing and we know you've all been working really, really hard. But...
Right. I was waiting for the but. I was waiting for you.
So we're all like sitting there thinking, we've turned a corner. He's seeing, the good stuff that we're doing. But, and then leaping into, the quarterly results. We haven't hit our targets. So now we're going to require everyone to work XYZ more hours. It's a mixed message. And it's not authentic and it's not genuine.
And something you're picking up there, which I think is potentially even more important than what I was thinking about. You're talking about there, not just consistency of message, but you're talking about consistency of action.
Yes.
Where the action matches what the rhetoric was.
Yes.
Really good. I left this one till last. No, not for any particular reason. Why did curiosity make the list? Why is curiosity important in communication?
Curiosity, personally for me, is really, really important. As I said, my joint honours was in psychology. So from a very, very young age, I've always been very curious about people, how they speak, what they do, how they behave. In fact, one of my favourite pastimes was going to the airport. I always wanted to work in an airport because I just thought it was fascinating. Seeing all those people with all those stories, where are they going? Who are they going to meet? In what circumstances? And I think that to be a good, effective communicator and a leader, I think you've got to have this insatiable curiosity that drives you every day. It's like in some of my communication skills workshops, I often say to participants, or I'm now going to change that word participants to contributors, because I think contributors is a better word. And I can't credit myself for that. It was a podcast I was listening to and someone brought this up, and I think it's a really good point. It's that insatiable curiosity to ask questions. And it's also about taking the ego away, saying, look, I don't know everything, but I'm going to ask someone that might know, or I'm going to ask the question and see what I get back. So there's great power in collective wisdom. So as I said, as a facilitator, I learn probably as much as they learn from me or the content, because I really do believe that by asking those questions and being genuinely curious, you're going to reap the rewards. You're going to get back so much. And as a leader, I think that you have to go into the room sometimes saying, I don't know all the answers, but I'm looking at you, my team, to ask those questions and to see what I get back.
I love that. It embraces our first value here at the Leadership Project, which is about diversity of thought. The other one was we had an article just the other day about knowing when to be the first person to speak and knowing when to be the last person to speak, and to give that room for curiosity. I hadn't codified it until your explanation right now but allowing that space for people to grow, allowing that space for people to express themselves, allowing the space for people to be curious, and then everyone is richer for the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Really like it. I think we almost stumbled across this a few minutes ago, and I'm going to come back to it now. In your experience, can you share with us, and whether you name them or not, doesn't matter, share with us some leaders that you've had that really inspired you?
Yeah, well, that leader that came to mind a while back was, the one that really did take the time to get to know each individual person. It's not just a team member working for the person, but it was actually, taking the time to know the backstory, to know the context, to know the conditions, to know the likes, the dislikes. I really appreciated that. And he was someone that would come into a room and he'd taken the time and he'd been genuinely curious about your lives, because you could feel the energy. As soon as he walked in, the energy of the room would go up. And he was on a winner. He was never on a back foot, because everyone just appreciated that he took the time with us. I mean, sometimes he'd come up with ideas and you'd think, oh my goodness, that's a bit out there. But he had this capacity to kind of charm us all.
Yeah.
And at first, at the beginning of the meeting, we might think, no, that's just not going to work. That's too out there. But by the end of it, we'd all be behind it. So, yeah, it was kind of a magical way he had about him as he entered the room.
There's two things that are immediately popping into my mind here, and I want to share them with you. There's a New Zealand Maori term called mana. And what you've just described is mana to me. It's really hard to describe exactly what it means in English, but I'll do my best, and probably some of our New Zealand audience will correct me on. But my interpretation of mana is when someone enters a room and they have, the closest thing I could describe it to is presence. And everyone gravitates to that person, even before they've opened their mouth. They've just got that natural ability of, it's not being arrogant, it's not being flamboyant, it's none of that. It's having presence. It's almost being calm in many respects, but everyone gravitates because they know that something, and you use the word, they know that something magical is about to happen, right? To me, what you described was mana. The other one, and this is a favourite saying of ours here at the Leadership Project as well, is we've all heard the saying before that you should treat other people the way you want to be treated. And we don't prescribe to that. We prescribe to one that is, you should treat other people the way they want to be treated. And this manager or leader that you're talking about has taken the time to get to know you and then understand your motivations and then treat you the way that you want to be treated. So that's absolutely outstanding. You know what question's coming next, because this is this one can be either very challenging or very easy, because most people have had a few of these. And I'll purposely use a different word now too. Have you had any managers or bosses that have been the opposite of that, have not inspired you, or you wouldn't consider to be a leader?
Yes, I have, unfortunately. And I have to say I've had more of those than I've had good, inspiring ones. And it is, I think we talked about this before, it's amazing how many people have experienced more negative than positive. So I know I'm not alone in this.
Unfortunately not, yeah. Most people can think of, we should survey this actually, I should do this as one of our surveys. I think most people can think of 2, 3, if they're lucky, 4 or 5 inspiring leaders, sometimes only one. And then if you ask them, what about the opposite? Oh yeah, I got a list for you. So what are those attributes? What are the things that led you to be either demotivated, not inspired?
Yeah, I think it's the opposite of what I described as the inspiring leader. It was the fact that they didn't take the time to really get to know the people that were working with and for them. And I think the use of preposition there is really important. Working for or with someone. That is a small word, but it has a massive impact. So the uninspiring, I would say, leaders or managers that I've had is that they've had great emphasis on that you are working for me. And therefore, whatever I say goes. And there's no discussion around that. I also think that it's quite significant if you're in a meeting with your team and the leader or the manager is speaking and there's deathly silence. There's a difference between comfortable silence and deathly silence. There's a difference in energy. It's the complete opposite to your word manner. Yeah, it's completely the opposite. I've been in meetings in a physical space and in a virtual space where I've actually could feel in my body discomfort. I could feel this feeling coming up. I could feel my shoulders. I'm doing it now as I'm speaking to you, as I'm reliving the experience. My shoulders coming up, everything feeling a lot stiffer, where no one really wants to speak. Everyone is just sitting passively listening, often with their cameras turned off. So straight away, that's a signal to say, we're here, but we're not really here. And so there was a sense of, we're not with you. We're just here.
It's interesting, a few things there. A lot of what you spoke about was also body language. It wasn't just what was being said, it was what was not being said. And the posturing, and we're on a podcast so people can't see the actions that you did, but your body tensed up as you were talking about it. They literally tensed up as you were talking about it, which also means that it was tapping into how you felt. It actually doesn't matter now what, we're going to borrow Maya Angelou here, and apparently she didn't even say these words, but she's...
Oh, didn't she?
No, but I was reading this the other day, and she's credited with this quote. She's had many other quotes that are also famous, but she's credited with this quote, and someone debated it the other day. People may forget what you said, they may forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And the reaction when we spoke about these bosses and managers that you had before... your whole posture changed, and it was...
Yeah, it's visceral, it's physical, and your body feels it. You know, we're connect. Our minds and our bodies are deeply connected. And even if you can't actually express in words what you're feeling at that time, or you're not really sure how you can define what it is that manager or that leader is doing, but you can feel it. There's an instinct there.
One thing I'd like to say to our audience and people that are following the blog, etc., they would have seen similar things to this. And we're borrowing this one from Simon again, actually. Probably should start sending him checks. We borrow a lot of his statements. He also talks about be the leader you wish you always had. And we believe in the power of self-reflection. And one of the things there is to bottle up all those feelings. So remember all those times. Remember those times that you had the inspiring leader and how they made you feel and what they did to make you feel like that. Remember all those times where you had your entire body stiffen up and how that felt and what were the actions of that manager that led you to feel like that. And just remember them. Put them in your mental diary, your knowledge bank of what leadership attributes and traits drove you insane and which ones inspired you. And then you can start becoming the leader that you wish you had. So thanks again, Simon. Maybe I should send you a check. I'm going to get back to communication skills now, because we are in a very interesting time, an unprecedented time in history. People have been working from home for more than 12 months now. You're in my office right now and you can see my crazy Zoom setup with standing desks and cameras and lights and all this kind of stuff that I've built over 12 months because out of necessity. And I spend a incredible number of hours on Zoom every day and every night. What does that mean for communication skills? How has communication skills changed in a work from home environment keeping in mind that many people are saying that we may never return to the previous normal, and either work from home or hybrid environments are here to stay. Any tips, and this doesn't have to be for leaders, this can be for anyone, any tips on communication skills in a work from home environment?
Yeah. It's been tough, hasn't it? I think we can all agree that it's been really challenging for a lot of people. And, you know, and some of us, including myself, hadn't really experienced like the Zoom platform before and was very much, you know, working in person. So to go from in person to behind a screen is a massive jump and an adjustment in terms of communication. So simple things like knowing the angle of the camera and how to position yourself. I think that's really important because obviously in face-to-face, we don't think about that. We're using our hands all the time. But when you're in front of a camera, you've really got to be much more intentional and aware of what people are seeing from you. The other thing that was quite challenging in the beginning was this idea of having the camera on. Some people didn't want it. And I think that if you're in an in-person environment, you're not going to walk into a meeting in your pajamas, are you? Let's be fair. So, I mean, a big part of communication is the visual aspect. So we can't deny that. But we have the technology that can allow us to have the visual, so use it. So first of all, have the video on. Get yourself into a mindset that you're starting the working day. So, you know, even though we're working from home, I'd always keep with the same routine. Get myself dressed, put my makeup on, or do whatever it is that you do to get yourself ready for, you know, your job. And turn up with that mindset in front of the camera as if you would be walking into that physical space. And that's difficult to get into, but after a while you can practice and kind of get yourself into a zone. So I think camera and visual is really important. I think that we've been feeling very isolated, even though we're connected and we can stay in contact with people through so many different channels now. You know, you've got WhatsApp groups, you've got email, you've got text, you've got video messaging, you've got so many different channels, but yet people still feel so isolated and disconnected. So I think that certainly from a leader's point of view, and I think it's the responsibility of all the team, is to say, okay, we're going to put connection first and foremost. What I was finding before was we were very much working in silos, and I don't think that there was enough time spent intentionally on just getting us together every week, just getting us together with perhaps no agenda. Yeah, right. Just take the agenda away and just, you know, open up with a few simple questions like, how's the week been going for you? Where were those moments of happiness? Where did you find what was positive about the week?
Yeah.
But also don't be afraid of asking, you know, what hasn't gone so well? How are you feeling? And being prepared for a barrage of different answers. Because some people really taken to this way of working and they really enjoy it. But others have had a very, very different experience.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be empathetic to that and be prepared to have the negativity as well as the positive.
If you're going to ask someone how they are, take the time to listen to the answer and really listen to the answer.
Yeah.
What about on that, the engagement and being in the moment? And think about that on Zoom. Here we are, we're in the same room together and it's a very engaging conversation, or at least I think it is. And
Me too.
It's good. So it's a very engaging conversation. We're both in the moment. We're not distracted by anything else. Translate that to a Zoom environment. Any tips you can give to communicators out there about making sure that you're in the moment?
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? I mean, I've got, as I've already said, 3 young kids. Sometimes they're in the house. They're making noise. And a lot of it has been lots of negotiation and knowing yourself, knowing your environment, and being honest about that.
Yeah.
And hopefully having a leader that can appreciate that or empathize with that. Little things make a big difference to me in communication. It's like, okay, if you've got a meeting scheduled and your manager's insisting on a particular time, and you know at that stage you're going to have a bit of chaos in the house, then let him know about it.
Yeah.
You know, just be honest about it and say, you know, would it be all right if we just made that 30 minutes later because this is happening? No need to hide that stuff, and just make sure that you've got all the conditions there that you can to be fully present. Stop the email notifications, stop the phone.
That's where I was going to go with that. I want to come back to a few things that you said there. So what you're describing, there's nothing wrong with that. That's about authenticity. We're actually seeing a window into people's lives that we didn't previously see. And we're seeing the way that they are with their families. And actually, that's all lovely. And there's no issue whatsoever with that. But where you were going at the end there, that's the bit that I think becomes a problem. If you're on a Zoom call with someone, it's actually dead obvious if you're also writing someone else an email or WhatsApping someone else or Zoom messaging someone else at the same time that someone else is talking to you. And that's the bit that I talk about be in the moment. Put your phone down. Put the phone down face down. Don't be reading your email when someone's talking to you. Be in the moment. Focus. Do what's needed to be done, and that email can wait. Or if you do have to answer an urgent email or an urgent phone call, have the courtesy to say, oh, sorry, I've just got to answer this. I'll be right back. So that's the bit I was talking about with engagement and be in the moment. I would not be worried 1 second about the family environment. I think everyone has come to accept that. Not just accept that, actually, in some cases, very much enjoy that, because we're seeing, like I said, window into your life that we don't normally see. We didn't speak too much about body language so far. Let's go to that one. As a communication expert, what can you share with us about the power of body language versus what we say?
So, I mean, I think you can see how genuine someone is if what they're saying and their body language aren't matching. So we might say, you know, simple question, how are you? I'm fine, but the body and the face is saying something different. So that's the basic. The body and the words have got to be aligned. They've got to be synchronized in some way. When we're communicating virtually, we are putting a lot of effort, more effort into understanding the message than we would in person. So the body language and the gestures you use have to be a bit more exaggerated than they normally would. So if I think of it in a learning context, in a workshop context, I feel like I have to be a bit bigger than I normally would in a physical environment, because it won't be caught on camera so much. So it has to be a bit more emphasized. That brings me to this debate that I've had recently on social media, is whether we should sit or stand. And that's caused lots of reaction, lots of different feelings on this. But what I would say is that it depends on the context and the purpose of the meeting, the number of people that you have, the length of time it is that you're meeting online. And I would say try to go on the shorter rather than the longer, just because attention spans are so much shorter. Sorry, I've kind of gone off on a tangent.
That's okay. We were talking about body language, but it was good.
I think in terms of sitting and standing, if you're sitting, then I would suggest that's going to be something of a bit more of an intimate conversation, probably maybe with 1 or 2 or 3 people. But if you're standing, you want to energize or motivate or inspire, I wouldn't necessarily sit. I generally feel less energetic if I'm sitting, and I have this horrible habit of hunching over as time goes by, which affects the voice. Yeah, so I think it does depend on the context of the feeling you want to create in that space. Virtual space is no different to the physical space. You still want people to feel something when they see you on camera.
That's really interesting. We're literally sitting here in my office, which is a standing office. and you can see my setup. I stand up I actually work nights, right? So I work through the night, US time, based here in Singapore, and I literally stand all night. But the reason why I did that wasn't the body language, but I'm now going to reflect on that and think about it. The reason why I did that is because I just got sick of sitting all the time. Felt like I'd been sitting for 12 months. So I converted everything to a standing office. The guilty secret to share with you, because you spoke about then energy, or you were touching on it. I also take meetings with an organization called the NAS Academy, which is created by Nasaya Yassin, who's a well-known vlogger who did 1,000 videos in 1,000 days. This guy is amazing. I should say not every one of those videos, but I'm going to say 90% of those videos, very thought-provoking, well put together, great storyteller. And I've attended some of the programs of the NAS Academy. I've got to tell you, every session with that group, the alumni meetings, all of the meetings that we have, at the start and the finish of the meeting, there's a dance-off. So you are also sitting on my personal dance floor. And it's all on Zoom. It's
wow. I might want to see that after this.
It's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. And you can tell some people are uncomfortable with it, by the way, and others just go, what the hell? Yeah. It's just Zoom. And they have a theme song that they play, and it's this wonderful dance-off. We also almost touched on this before, and then we deviated a second. It was probably my fault, of course. What about a listening skill? We've spoken a lot about posture, talking, etc. We've spoken a lot about broadcasting and the message that you're sending. What is effective listening skills, and why is that so important?
So I think listening is very linked to empathy and compassion. So I think first and foremost, if I'm listening to you, I'm going to be listening from a position of non-judgment. And I'm saying that, and it's easier said than done, because often our default is we're listening and we are thinking in our minds of what to say next or how to solve that particular issue that you're about to share. And so oftentimes we need to sit back, relax, just listen to what's being said, and just think about how you're reacting. Don't react straight away. And the other thing is be upfront with the person. If the person is about to share with you an issue that they have, you as the speaker could take the responsibility on. If they don't tell you this, you could say something like, okay, I know you're about to share an issue with me. Would you like me to listen from the point of view of helping you solve this issue? Or would you like me just to listen? And saying that up front then makes us listen with intent, and with the right intent for the person that is sharing. It might be that the sharer is going to say to you, I did this recently. I met up with a friend and I said, I'm about to share with you some challenge that I'm going through at the moment. I really don't want you to give me advice. I just want you to listen. And she was fine with that. And she's a great listener. She's a very close friend of mine. And she did that without judgment, without giving me advice. And when I was ready and I wanted to talk about things that could possibly be done to resolve this, she went with that. But she let me do that in my own time.
That's great advice on both sides. I'm going to take that away and think about that. But first I'm going to reflect and say that is a difficult skill if someone doesn't tell you or you don't test it. You can be listening and in your head you're already questioning, is this person asking me to help them, or are they just venting and they need that vent? And venting can be so helpful. Right, so that's a really good one. And I've never really thought before about actually testing it up front. I usually try to work it out myself. But now, if I am going to vent, and I'm human too, by the way, so I do vent sometimes. I've got my people that I can, including my wife for sure. I've got some people that I can just vent with and they just listen. And it is really helpful. It's cathartic, all of those things. And other times I'm like, you got any advice here? Like, Can you help me? But I don't take the time to say up front whether I'm just venting or whether I need help. So I will take that away personally, and then I'll think about, in the same situation, if I'm sitting in a conversation and I don't know if the person is asking for help or just venting, I will stop and go, oh, what do you need here? Do you need me to just listen? Or because I can do either I'm a good listener or I'm a good problem solver. Which one do you want today?
Yeah.
Time to bring us towards a close. Now, a question that we ask all of our guests, Lisa and I, this is one that I did pre-warn you on. On most of these questions, you had no idea what was coming. So thank you for being a willing participant in my questioning. This question we do ask to all our guests, though. What advice do you have to a young person today? They might be 3 to 5 years out of university and they're moving from individual contributor through to some kind of leadership or management role for the first time. Any advice that you would give that person?
Yeah, and this is tough, but I think to have the courage to say, I don't know sometimes, is to say I don't know and just own it and not be ashamed of it, because we all start somewhere, and not everyone is going to have lots and lots of experience to refer to. So it's okay to say, I don't know, but don't stop there. Be curious and be genuine in wanting to find out. So have that, that learning mindset, saying, okay, I don't know at the moment, but I know someone who probably will know. So I'm going to ask them. Or just give me a moment, I'm going to research that and I'll come back to you. Don't be afraid, because I think more often than not, people like you to be honest about it rather than just trying to fumble your way through, because that often leads to something that sounds and looks a bit messy. And so then the trust gets lost as a result. So just have the courage to say, I don't know at this point, but I'm going to find out.
For me, that's definitely a trust builder. You mentioned that. And it's also about being authentic. I think that's really good. Certainly, I've never had a situation where I have stuck up my hand and say, I just don't get this, where I've regretted doing that. I've never had that occasion. And no one's ever gone, who is this guy? How does he not know this? That's never happened in my life, right? So don't be scared. And courage was a great word that you used there as well. Thank you so much, Lisa. This has been so much fun. I feel like we should do it again sometime, first of all, because there's so many topics that we touched on that could be deeper topics at one point. What I'd like to do now is give you the floor and talk about 6C. Talk about your business, about the services you provide, or anything you want to share with the audience. The floor is yours.
First of all, thanks so much for inviting me. This has been a really great experience. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Yeah, so I founded SIXCOMMS in January of this year, so it's pretty new. And I'm just basically putting into the business all the skills that I have accumulated over the years, being a communication skills facilitator and trainer. So we offer bespoke programs. So it's nothing off the shelf. It's really about consulting with the client, finding out what they need, and then providing either a virtual, a hybrid or a face-to-face learning experience, I like to call them, because they're very interactive. I try to make it as engaging and interactive as I can, aligned with what the client needs. So that could be presentation skills. It could be about facilitation skills, because I've been doing this for quite some time now. So how do you facilitate an online meeting in a more interactive, engaging way? So that's another thing I could offer. I do lots of work with professional writing, so how to write effective emails. So it's everything in terms of communication, and also customer service excellence. I've worked a lot with some quite famous brands here in Singapore that are known for their customer service. So I really enjoy that as well. So how can we communicate with customers in a more engaging, meaningful way, building relationships?
That's wonderful, Lisa. And thank you again so much for your time today. Best of luck with the business. And I'm sure it's going to be a wonderful success. I'm sure your personality and all of your experience will make sure that's the case. You've been listening to The Leadership Project with your host, Mick Spears. We really hope you enjoyed this fantastic interview with Lisa Partridge of 6C SIXCOMMS. I personally took so many nuggets of gold from her advice, her experience and her knowledge. We will include an extract of some of those great bits of information from today's episode in the show notes, and also leave you with Lisa's contact details in case you do want to get hold of 6C SIXCOMMS and use their services. We hope you're enjoying the show. Please do remember to hit subscribe on your preferred podcast service so that you're advised of all future episodes. And please do tell your friends if you believe that they will get great value from the show as well. We look forward to bringing you more great guests in the very near future. And in the meantime, please do take care and always remember to challenge the status quo.